The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Howdy ho, everybody. Coming to you cordless from glamorous Minneapolis. It's Monday night, February 9th, 2026. I'm Jim Peters, and welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is episode number 314. If you're keeping score at home, and you know there's going to be a test someday. I don't know when. Our guest tonight is Jonathan Lockwood, our old friend, a military historian, author, and former U.S. Army colonel, and we have him on mostly to talk about military matters. And today, usually he talks about Ukraine. Today, we're going to talk about Iran, too. And he's joining us now from his home in Reston, Virginia. Hi, Jonathan. How are you?
Oh, doing just great. I was busy grooving to your theme music.
I wrote that, Jonathan. Thank you.
You did. Oh, yeah, very good. It's really nice.
And what happened to the T-shirt, Jonathan?
Oh, the T-shirt? The T-shirt.
Oh, you still have it. Oh, yeah, that's right. Look at that.
Yeah. Samurai Kitty.
Samurai Kitty, yeah.
Kathleen likes it because it's the kitty cat version of Godzilla.
Yeah, well, that's what I got too. I got a giant jungle cat living in my house.
There you go.
He should be in the zoo or whatever.
Well, he probably looks at you lovingly purring, and basically what his purr is saying to you is, "If I were any bigger, you'd be lunch."
Oh yeah, that's right. I know there's a comedian, I can remember who said this, and the joke is, if your house cat was a little bit bigger, could kill you. You know, it's true.
I had a couple of those. Yeah.
How are you doing?
I am doing just excellent. Survived the Snowmageddon, the major snow event.
Yeah, you guys did that, didn't you?
Oh, well, and in certain spots, well, due to it, as I told you before about the accident with the snowplow basically sealed us in with and then when the rain and sleet came, it created a wall of ice in front of my garage. And I basically had to call on my men's Bible study group, and they came to my rescue with a team of 5 guys, and just with pickaxes to break the ice shield. Then they carry those away out and create some piles, and then finally they were able to shovel to just push the snow all out of the way and create a nice clear path. So we had a celebration breakfast thereafter, my treat, and it worked out really well.
We know all about that here in Minnesota. That's
Minnesota.
Hey, I'm glad you came on. I told you I want to talk about Iran because I thought, well, first of all, nothing happened this weekend other than the fact that the talks in Iran and Oman got killed. Basically, they're done. But your cohort on Fox News, Jack Keane,
yes.
So, he is saying, and I kind of agree with this too, that really this, usually, and he says, most people say, diplomatic action first, but he's saying, maybe that the military should just get in and kill this thing off. What do you think of this?
Well, it depends on what degree of military action he's thinking about. Now, it's the least likely form of military action, in my opinion, would be a full-scale invasion of Iran. If you look at the geography of Iran, that is just an invitation to a grinding forever war.
Is it kind of like Afghanistan in that sense?
It's worse than Afghanistan. If you take, I would recommend, as a matter of fact, I would recommend to our viewers a book. Not necessarily my book, because this one would be more specific. It's by Tim Marshall. The title is Prisoners of Geography. And basically, he has 10 maps of various areas of the world that show you the geopolitical challenges that the leaders in these regions face. And the United States has its own chapter, and it points out our unique advantages and disadvantages potentially.
Well,
And
forgive me, I'm getting a little off topic here, but I do have to ask. Along with China and Russia, one of our big advantages is that we're just plain huge, right?
well, huge, but we are protected by two oceans.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and if you matter of fact, another handy aid for our viewers, just get, and I'm going to suggest to you what I suggested on another program. If you really want to get a better understanding in a fairly easy fashion, not only get Tim Marshall's book Prisoners of Geography, but if your viewers happen to have the game of Risk, remember that?
Oh yeah.
Risk. It's been called everybody's first war game.
Yeah.
It's a very, very simple, and I've had, and what I recommended to the viewers is that you could take this basic game of Risk, and you could play a special scenario that I've devised, which gives you greater insight into the Trump administration. I call this the Trump scenario. In the Trump scenario, you have 6 players. Each player controls a different continent: North America, South America, Africa, Asia, Europe, and Australia. 6 players. They all get 20 armies to start, and they allocate them however they wish on their respective continents. And the North America player is the Trump player. It's the Trump scenario. And then you have what I call a diplomatic phase. Before the game actually starts with fighting, you have a diplomatic phase where the players all try to negotiate with each other, form alliances or whatever. And the Trump player on a brisk board has 3 main areas to defend. He has Greenland, because we assume they own Greenland, control Greenland in this case. Alaska, that's the second point, and Central America, the third point. That's the complete control of North America. And in the Trump scenario, the Trump player gets the first move, which means he gets reinforcements first, he gets it, and he has the initiative. Then just play the game of Risk as you will. And you get to see the Trump player has some unique advantages and disadvantages. He can attack in any one of 3 major strategic directions, and he also is very hard to attack. So it's not like he has a whole bunch of territories to defend. But it's an interesting scenario. In this case, you've got, as far as Iran is concerned, well, they're stuck in the Middle East, and but this shows you in a very basic way what the world looks like from the U.S. perspective. And in this case with Iran, the United States is acting more or less like a geopolitical balancer. They are not threatened by any one country per se, but what they have is the ability to counterbalance any potential aggressors in the region. So here, when you're looking at Iran, and Iran is an existential threat not to the United States, it's an existential threat to Israel.
Yeah.
Israel is a close ally of the United States. And from Iran's perspective, what they would be trying to do, they're in favor of escalation. They want to create turmoil, chaos in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And the United States does not see chaos in the Middle East as in its interest, because that's a threat to its major ally, Israel. So the United States.
Sorry for interrupting you here, but when I understand this weekend, what happened is that Iran, of all the points that the United States wants to negotiate on, Iran said all of them are off the table except them not making nuclear weapons, which means that they still want to have their ballistic missiles, and of course their ballistic missiles easily reach Israel.
Right.
And they say that's a non-negotiable position, which killed the whole thing.
Right. So that's very interesting then. So now the United States has the option. They can reinforce and supplement Israel's ballistic missile defense system, their Iron Dome. Yeah, the Trump administration, as you know, is proposing its old Golden Dome,
right?
Which I would be in favor of, but you have to be very careful of the hidden flaw in the Golden Dome, which most people are not aware of. I am aware of it because of my experience in wargaming, my study of military history, and my close examination of ballistic missile defense over the
So,
past.
25 words, what is that?
The hidden flaw in the Golden Dome, because it has to rely, because they're talking about using hundreds, if not thousands, of satellites
Yeah.
to conduct boost phase, what would be boost phase ballistic missile defense against Russia or China firing intercontinental ballistic missiles. The Russians and the Chinese have counter space weapons to go against our satellites. If you put a bunch of satellites trying to shoot down missiles, and you've got counter space weapons that are trying to destroy satellites, what you have now is a Mexican standoff in low Earth orbit. The decisive advantage goes to the side that decides to fire first. It's highly unstable and very tense. So what the Golden Dome has to avoid.
Hold it, Jonathan. However, isn't that basically a ground version of what we already have, or a space version of what we already have?
Ground. What we have is a ground-based ballistic missile defense. It is not space-based.
No, I understand that, but my point, my question is, don't we already have that Mexican standoff on the ground? Isn't that pretty much what we're doing right now?
No, not so much a Mexican standoff. The side doesn't go to the advantage. They aren't able to destroy our means of attack, and they aren't able to destroy our ballistic missile defense systems on the ground. So they can't do that. But by trying to establish a Golden Dome and trying to establish an impenetrable ballistic missile defense, which would render Russia and China's nuclear arsenals obsolete and useless. And the Russians and the Chinese have both stated they consider this highly destabilizing, not because it threatens their existence, it threatens their power.
Right.
It threatens their leverage.
Of course
they want to maintain the leverage. So that's why the Golden Dome is, to the Russians and Chinese, inherently provocative. So anyway,
I have to ask you, what is the for the recent 12-day war, what was the success rate of the Iron Dome in Israel? It was about what, 95, 97% or something like that?
It was very high. I mean, it was very high. A similar success rate to what Ukrainian ballistic missile defense systems were, again using the buttressed by the Patriot, which has now attained, before, way back when in the Persian Gulf War, the interception rate of the Patriot vis-a-vis Scuds and others was much lower. Some still got through, but it was credible enough to prevent the war from escalating.
Right.
Now that Raytheon has had a couple of decades to improve the performance of Patriot, and matter of fact, when the Ukrainians got a hold of Patriot, they managed to make it even more effective than Raytheon thought it could be, near 100% interception rate. And that has frustrated the Russians' attempt to simply wage a terror campaign against the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians have gotten a lot smarter about this. They have dispersed. Those missile attacks don't cause anywhere near the number of casualties that the Russians would want, because they have now a combination of ballistic missile defense, air defense, and the Ukrainians are striking back. They are rapidly wearing down the Russian ability to wage war. So, but if you're looking at Iran, the Iranians, they have geography on their side defensively, so they would be able to resist a military takeover or an invasion quite successiously.
What is the geographic layout of Iran? I don't even know.
You just take a look at a globe and a map, and you see this huge mountain range, this huge ring of mountains, just surrounding the exterior of Iran. Then, in order to successfully conquer Iran, you would have to be going through a series of mountain ranges and easily defensible terrain, which would be an absolute nightmare for any attacker, especially the American army, which is not really used to fighting that way, unless you count Afghanistan. And again, that's not a very appetizing prospect for. We have the ability to project power. We're even pretty darn good at sustaining power, supplying it. But when you get into mountainous terrain, that tends to nullify much of your technological advantage. and it brings the level down to the level that the Iranians want, a war of attrition.
From a strategic point of view, a lot of people pointed out that the problem with regime change and, like you said, an invasion is that a lot of times what you end up with is actually worse than what you're replacing. But on the other hand, people here, when it comes to the Iranian situation, think that the current regime has been so bad, nothing could be worse. You don't think so?
I would offer as a counterpoint to that, there was an alternate history novel entitled Fox on the Rhine, and it had the premise of, what if the assassination attempt against Adolf Hitler had succeeded, but his replacement was even worse? Heinrich Himmler, the architect of the final solution.
Right.
He was pure evil, but he wasn't nuts. And he had and in the alternate history novel, he managed to forge a separate peace, a big pullback, and basically made peace with the Soviet Union, and was able to concentrate forces in the West. This is, again, after the Allies had gotten onto Normandy. So essentially, I won't spoil the climax of the novel for you, but what it inherently involves, Rommel does not die in this scenario because the assassination attempt had succeeded. And so the climax of the book is this huge tank battle in central France between Patton and Erwin Rommel.
You know, I think I told you this on a previous broadcast. I knew a Nazi who was in the room at the Wolf Lair when that bomb went off. And what he told me, he said, what no one in the West knew, everyone thought that Hitler got out of that unscathed, and he said that wasn't true. Hitler was actually hurt really badly and actually spent weeks in the hospital. The people who came for the photo ops afterwards that afternoon were all doubles. That's what he said. He said Hitler barely lived through it.
Yeah, just by that much. Yeah, and in the alternate history novel, rather than push the briefcase away, he was distracted by scratching his nose and didn't bother to move the suitcase. Kaboom!
Yeah.
It actually killed Hitler in the alternate history novel. But the lesson of that is, be careful what you wish for.
Well, that's the reason I brought this up. People have always said that, but the current regime has been so goddamn awful that people think, well, God, if you're going to roll dice here, and Jack Keane was talking about this too. If you're going to roll dice, this is a pretty good time to do it.
I would respectfully disagree.
Okay.
And I would respectfully disagree with General Keane. Actually trying to affect regime change through military action. Now, you might actually be better off, in this case, standing off, reinforcing Israel's defense, making sure that Israel is secure, and make sure that the other Arab neighbors don't try to pile on or take advantage of the chaos to create a wider war in the Middle East. That should be the focus, preventing it from spreading. And in this case, I would say standing off with our military power and continuing to, maybe taking out their nuclear facilities or cooperating with the Israelis, because the Israelis have a much better developed intelligence network in that region than we do.
Yeah.
They would be foolish if they didn't have a better developed intelligence network than we do. And the idea is to neutralize, the goal should be neutralize Iran's ability to make further mischief, either with its nuclear program or with its missiles. Because if you supply Israel and help build its regional ballistic missile defense, that pretty much frustrates Iran's ability to make trouble for Israel and, by extension, the United States. And you use diplomatic and economic pressure.
Well, speaking of economic pressure, that's the one thing that's got lost here, and that's kind of been lost in the news cycle too. And that is one of the reasons this is happening right now. Maybe the primary reason is that Iran's economy is completely in the dumper. The rial is worthless. And the reason people say, well, why are all these people in Iran protesting all of a sudden? They literally don't have a job to go to. They have nothing else to do. There's the money is that's the other thing. I mean, in some ways, they need regime change because the only way Iran's going to get out of this economically is if somebody comes in and props them up, whether that's us or China or whoever, because their economy is complete.
Russia and China are in no shape to prop up Iran. They are facing their own problems, severe problems, specifically demographic problems. Have you noticed that it has been reported that both Russia and China are suffering population decline?
Yeah,
they are shrinking,
right.
And it's largely their own fault.
Yeah,
because
the thing that China did years ago about the one
child policy
completely came out and backfired on them. I mean, it's like he's kicking them in the ass. It's hilarious, actually. It's like
they are going to be declining in population for the remainder of the 21st century.
Yeah,
as is Russia. Russia, by some opinion of some observers, the Russian nation itself is in danger of disappearing, becoming irrelevant. And China has its own claims on Russian territory, so Russia and China could well be at each other's throats for the remainder of the 21st century, and not in any position to make problems for the rest of the world, or specifically the United States. And interestingly enough, the illegal immigration problem that we are facing now, because of all those illegal immigrants, okay, Trump administration has the right priority: get rid of all the criminals. Get rid of all, obviously criminal, the lawbreakers, you get them out of there. Then with the remainder, you have a gray zone. You have quite a number of people who are thinking or want to have a better life in the United States, and they're working, but they just didn't go through the proper legal path.
Right.
What you start doing is, okay, it then becomes incumbent upon DHS and others to say, okay, identify these people. Say, you make a bargain with them. Says, okay, are you willing now to go through the proper procedures to become citizens? And if you can't, okay, we will conditionally give you conditional approval. It's sort of an amnesty, as some have called it. And you can then just sort of wend your way through. And if you can successfully absorb and integrate this massive illegal immigrants who are in what I would call the gray area. They came here illegally, but they are willing to cut a deal. Make it. And a matter of fact, you could use that also to the military could relieve its manpower shortages by saying, okay, you could take an idea from Robert Heinlein, the science fiction author of Starship Troopers, and say he believed that every citizen should serve in the military who wants to be a citizen. That's how you earn your citizenship.
Right.
Offer them a deal like that. You sign up for the U.S. military, any branch or whatever that you can be accepted in, and integrate them. The military is great at teaching skills.
Yes, fantastic.
They are. You can have a full range of skills that you could use in society, and once you're trained by the military, for example, cooks. You get trained as a cook, and that you get trained as a cook in the U.S. Army or any of the armed services, and you can and that young man or young woman can get a job in any restaurant in the country because they've been trained how to cook.
That's important because my wife and I talk about this. I talk about this on the show all the time too. Americans don't cook anymore. Do you realize how many people eat out all the time, or have food cooked for them? That's a better way to put it.
My wife, Kathleen, I hold up as the premier example of the way things used to be done, and in this case, on a much larger scale. My wife, Kathleen, from the time she was 4 years old, her mother, her father, and her grandmother all began teaching her how to cook. And simple stuff at first, just assisting her working out. And Kathleen tells me that by the time she was 9 years old, she was able to prepare an entire dinner meal for her family. Do it all.
Yeah.
And her mother took full advantage of that.
Right.
Yeah. She wanted to train her she didn't want her to go to college. She wanted to train her to, be a good housewife so you could get her married off to a proper person and do all that stuff. My wife, Kathleen, had different ideas. She acquired all these cooking skills, but she eventually put herself through college and got her master's degree from Georgetown. And through, shall we say, there's a song called God Bless the Broken Road. Through a series of very strange experiences, she eventually got over to Germany and got to Heidelberg. And I was fleeing a bad boss in Darmstadt. I got down to Heidelberg. We met in Heidelberg, and the rest is history. And the thing is, she could go on a program like Chopped. You know that program where you have a bunch of random ingredients, and
Right.
the winner can come up with the best recipe. She could win that thing because what she has on hand, she makes sure she has all the staples, all the ingredients, to where, just like in this last when we were shut in for 10 days, when we got to have our prepared stuff, but then she could just improvise and cook from anything.
Just don't get me started on Gordon Ramsay as a television entertainer, okay?
Well, no, not Gordon Ramsay. No. I would say, but on a program like Chopped, she would do extremely well. And I'm arguably one of the luckiest men on the planet.
Well, don't get me. I think I'm evidence of genetic knowledge, passed through knowledge, because my father and generations of the men on my father's side of the family were all professional cooks. I'm not. Nobody even, I don't quite understand. Nobody even had to show me how to do it. I just know how to do it. It's like, and so, there's always been that thing about whether knowledge can be passed down genetically. Sometimes I think that's kind of the way this works. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but no one ever showed me how to cook. I just knew how to do it. It's like,
and there are children that I'm familiar with. I know one girl in our church. She wants to be a master chef. I said, okay. So my wife has given her some recipe books and other things like that. I said, you develop that skill, and you will never have to worry about having a job.
That's true. You don't, especially nowadays. I mean, nobody does this. No one, I don't have to tell you that. I think that like 80% of people of the Americans don't cook at all. It's like, it's unbelievable. Well,
I'm part of the 20% who do.
Yeah,
and so
yeah, I am too.
Yeah. Now we do have one ritual every week. My wife and I go to Outback in Herndon, or locally to us, and because we know the staff there, and they've basically become like our extended family, and we go there. We're friends with all the staff. My wife has also takes various occasions to bring goodies for the staff, little presents, things that, and the female staff are all fighting over the presents. It says, "Ooh, I want this. I know I want this," and she's very good at that. And so we basically have this network. Same thing with our local Silver Diner restaurant, our local Outback restaurant. We establish relationships so that the people instantly recognize us when we come in, and it's like extended family, and that's the way it should be. And so I would say that I'm trying to develop increased relationships and activities with my local church, and I will be happy to suggest to these people is that, you need to also become a vehicle for learning, not just for developing your faith in Jesus, which is obviously the prime reason, but there are other things where you can show your Christian faith through helping various children develop their skills and being able to live a good, productive life. So that's all good. But
I mean, this is another kind of my beef too. There's not enough people don't have not enough relationships. I'd say that was probably a double negative there, but it's like,
well, the real treasure in heaven, and people, the Bible talks about lay up. Jesus says, don't concentrate on getting gold and silver. The real lay up for yourselves instead treasures in heaven. What are those treasures in heaven? Eternal relationships. Relationships with having an immortal lifespan, and being able to have relationships with every Christian or every believer in God who has ever lived.
Well, there's also the converse of that too, which you just alluded to, and that is nobody leaves with their stuff.
That's right.
It's all pointless at the end.
You can't die. You can't die with the most toys.
No,
Sorry.
you can't. No, you die with no toys. That's
Yeah.
right.
And what you carry with you into heaven.
We're too good at getting
Oh,
off the topic here. I
yeah,
do
go
want
ahead.
to get back to, so you were talking about Russia. I had a guy named William Dunn on the show because he was talking about his book, and he's also I think he's a former a general or colonel too. But I want to just point out to you that I told him about you and about your assessment
Oh my God!
I told him about your assessment of the Russian army, and he totally agreed with you about I find it fascinating. Like you pointed out that they still use donkeys. I mean, he said that he agreed with you that they're way overrated. So I just thought I'd point that out.
Yeah, and both the Russians and the Germans at the start of the Operation Barbarossa, the Germans, only about 10% of their divisions were motorized. 10%. They used mostly horses and wagons to supply their logistics. And essentially, the German army walked into Russia and they walked back out. They didn't ride back out. By contrast, the American army, they looked at this. The American army, by the time of the Normandy invasion, they were 100% motorized.
Yeah.
And so when the army broke out in Operation Cobra after the Normandy invasion, they managed to break out. Patton's army raced across France a lot faster than the Germans were able to invade in May of 1940 in France.
You and I have talked about this before, but it's really amazing how America really was able to gear up so quickly. I mean, at its height, the Ford Motor Company was making something like 60 airplanes a day or something like that. I mean, it's just like mind-boggling stuff.
Exactly. It is just, and Liberty ships, Liberty ships, they were these, very simple supply ships, that got supplies across to Great Britain or to the Pacific, and at maximum mobilization capability by 1944. The Liberty ships were produced using the production line principle. You start at one end, and at the other end, a Liberty ship would slide off into the water.
Yeah.
And at peak production capability, the Liberty ship was being produced in the United States, and from start of production line to sliding off into the water, at peak production capability, they were producing a Liberty ship every 60 minutes.
It's unbelievable.
It is totally mind-boggling. The United States in World War II was the most powerful and efficient war machine in human history.
Yeah.
No equal. Nobody comes close.
Right.
And we are nowhere near that capability today, simply because we have higher technology and we are producing higher quality weapons. In order for us to get back to it would take a truly existential threat to humanity for the United States to have to go to full war mobilization.
Well, I've told you this in the past. I have a friend of mine who works did work at NASA, and he told this about 20 years ago. He told me this. He said, we couldn't do the Apollo program nowadays. I said, well, why not? He said, because we're completely bogged down in bureaucracy. And look what's just happened. They just missed the seventh window to launch the Artemis 2.
Yeah.
And so now they're going on to number 8, and I understand, and I'm glad they're being careful because they weren't careful, and the Challenger blew up because they weren't careful, and that's what they're trying to avoid. But on the other hand, too, why can't they get this right? The damn tanks are leaking; they've been leaking and leaking, and it still doesn't work. It pisses me off.
Yeah, you're talking about NASA. Because they're the government. They're the government side of this,
right?
SpaceX. It's where when I talk about the space fleet and the necessity for our having a space fleet, where are you going to get the space fleet from? You get it from SpaceX. You buy the fleet from SpaceX. Of
course you're going to.
And any spacecraft, because remember Elon Musk's starships. Now he keeps talking about, we're going to use starships to get to Mars. No, you're not. A much smarter use of those starships would be to build the space fleet space fleet which would take care of the strategic problems and challenges here on Earth.
Yeah.
Clean out all the space junk. Use starships to clean up space junk. Use starships.
Did you see this, Jonathan? Well, Starlink, of course, is basically a subsidiary of SpaceX. They've announced that they want to put up 1 billion satellites. It's just mind-boggling. I mean, there's already so much goddamn stuff up there floating around already.
Exactly. You want to put up one. It's like his. It's like
these satellites are no bigger than softballs. They're
right.
very small, but still.
But if they can become space junk very easily.
Yeah, no shit.
You have a if you have a high-powered solar flare that could fry those satellites, and all of a sudden you've got a lot of space junk.
Yeah,
because those are not wired to protect against EMP or electromagnetic pulse.
And also they launch them now, assuming a certain percentage of them are going to fail right away. So it's like some of them are already space junk as soon as they get into orbit.
Yeah, that is why you're going to have to, in order to get out of this mess potentially, you have to have a space fleet consisting of starships. In my concept, I have a fleet of 12 starships, a minuscule number compared to what Musk and these other things think about. You have these starships with a combination of AI robots and human crew. You don't want to have all human crew because that puts a greater strain on your human resources.
Right.
But if you have a combination of AI robots and human crew, then you could sustain, for example, a constellation of 8 starships. Picture it in your mind as a circle of starships, 45 degrees apart. Every 45 degrees, there's another starship, and it's constantly rotating. And those starships would be armed with lasers capable of shooting down nuclear missiles in low Earth orbit. That fixes the link. That fixes the flaw in the Golden Dome. Uh-huh. It's a combination of satellites armed with lasers and starships armed with lasers. The starships protect the satellites. The satellites take out the missiles. And so you have an interlocking shield system.
Yeah.
Fixed. And those starships, when they aren't busy watching for nuclear missiles or Russian and Chinese counterspace satellites, they are busy cleaning up space junk. Yeah. Cleaning up the space junk. And you have extra starships. You could send 2 starships. My fleet of 12, you have 2 more. 2 in geosynchronous orbit. They're out there taking care of other missions, acting as reserve for the starships, and doing deep space surveillance. And then 2 starships would go to the moon.
Well, Jonathan, speaking of that, I don't know if you saw this. This was just this morning. Elon Musk says he's changed his priorities. Instead of wanting to go to Mars ASAP, now he wants to build a colony on the moon. Which is probably
somebody may have watched our program or watched my stuff and said, "Hey, this guy's making a lot of sense."
Yeah, that's right. You are.
You never know.
You are.
And but devote the priority to Earth and the moon first. You take care of the problems that are vexing our. And the thing I mentioned on another show is that, well, what about interplanetary travel and all these other? Well, if you've also looked at these articles, they talk about how the human body is physically not able to survive the stresses of traveling to Mars without, becoming problematic for their survival. Going to Mars would be a one-way trip. You couldn't come back to Earth. You wouldn't survive.
Right.
So what's the ultimate answer to this? As I said, is that when Christ returns and we are all resurrected with glorified immortal bodies, because the Bible says that's what we'll have. We will have bodies that are with greatly increased capabilities, as implied by the experience of Christ when he rose from the dead. And these bodies will have greatly superior capabilities. They will not age. They cannot get sick, cannot grow old, cannot die. And therefore, once you have a resurrected humanity that is able to live forever, for eternity with God, once you have with these superior capabilities, it is then and only then that under God's loving and careful supervision, humanity will at last be able to explore the rest of God's universe. Until then, we are under what astronomers used to call God's quarantine regulations. Our physical limitations and the fact that there's the speed of light. Doggone it, you just can't crack the speed of light, can you?
Yeah.
God knows how, but He's not going to tell us.
You just, I have 2 hours of questions based on what you just said in the last 5 minutes, but we're going to have to let it go.
Well,
it's a great.
Well, that's just a great reason to have, and in future episodes.
That's right. What do you mean you're going on other shows? You're cheating on me? No, I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Oh no, I never cheat on you.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
Yeah.
Joking.
Here's a funny one for you. You remember?
You in with a joke?
Oh yeah. Oh sure.
Okay,
why not?
Sure. Why not?
Well, it's a funny reference. You remember the show Lost in Space?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And the first and second years were pretty good. The first year was the best one. But in this one episode, Dr. Zachary Smith is walking along with the robot, and he comes upon this arch that has in it a lyre, a harp or a lyre. And Dr. Smith says, "Oh, what a beautiful lyre." And the robot says, "Danger, extreme danger." And he says, and Dr. Smith says, "Oh, don't be silly." He plucks it 3 times, dun, 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 kind of like a parody of the NBC theme.
Uh-huh.
And all of a sudden there's this explosion, and Dr. Smith he's going down. Then he materializes, and he says, "Where is this place? Oh, the fire? The smell of brimstone? No, it cannot be." And then there's this voice off to the side. He says, "So, Zachary, you finally got here." And Dr. Smith says, "Good heavens." And the voice says, "Guess again."
And I'm guessing the robot didn't join him, did he?
No, the robot didn't join. The robot couldn't.
No, that's
because
right.
the robot didn't. Yeah. But that was just perfect. And unfortunately, because I was going to elementary school at the time, and my first name is Jonathan, and the first actor's first name was also Jonathan Harris.
Yeah.
So the kids at school are all making fun of me, saying that I was Dr. Smith. I was actually Dr. Smith.
Yeah, you like
kind of. But when I saw that episode, the cliffhanger ending. Da-da-da. And the kids at school next day said, Dr. Smith went to hell.
I'm sorry you were that.
I went to a Lutheran church school, Missouri Synod Lutheran Church School. And I learned very quickly that just because kids go to a church school, that doesn't mean they're all Christian.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
Or they necessarily behave like Christians. So.
I have to let you go, Jonathan.
Yeah.
I appreciate this very much. So
oh yeah, we'll watch your ratings skyrocket.
That's right. We have to have you back to talk about the other 2 hours of the questions I have. So
there you go.
All right, we'll see you soon. Okay, you
Excellent.
Take care.
Okay.
Our thanks to Jonathan Lockwood there for coming on. Always interested in his insights on military matters and other stuff. So thanks to him. It's the At Night Snooze News for Monday, February 9th. Oh, before we get into this, so first of all, I got to thank Brittany Shears, Stylist of the Stars at Salon Amore on Friday for giving me such a great haircut. She's been cutting my hair for 15 years. So I do want to thank her. She does fabulous work too. If you're ever in Fridley, that's the place to go. If you know where that is, it's a suburb of Minneapolis. And also, I want to comment on the weather. I know the people like Jonathan referred to out east, they're just starting to warm back up again. And I guess but everything's relative. People are saying, well, the wind chill in New York City was 15 below. Well, here I'm sitting in Minneapolis. That's nothing. I can tell you, we get temperatures that are 15 below, let alone wind chill. But I understand, it's like I'm not trying to make fun of. It's like if you're not used to it, it's pretty tough. And the thing is, I guess I'm used to it. I hate it. I, it's the worst thing about living here. It's absolutely the worst thing. 4 months of the year, the weather sucks. 1 month, January, it's unbelievably cold. I mean, I've said this before. We generally in January get 2 or 3 days where the high is like 20 below zero. I mean, we're talking about Arctic temperatures, truly. Now this year was a little different. The highs were about 5 below, but it lasted for like a good week, 10 days. So I know it's like I don't know if it's better to have it. I have 2 Italian cars, and it actually says in the manuals, your car will not start if it's below 22 degrees below zero, and that's happened. So there's a thermostat. It just says no. We're not going to even try. So anyway, so like Jonathan was talking about, my condolences to the people out east, but it was 40 degrees here today. It's finally warming up, and the jet stream goes west to east, so it's going to be out to you guys if you're out there in the next day or two. So I wanted to talk. I really didn't want to talk about this, about the NFL halftime show for the Super Bowl, but there's a few things that have come up here. First of all, one of the things was from the Babylon Bee, which I just found hilarious, and I have to repeat it, and you can go there and read it. It's the Babylon Bee next year is going to host another patriotic halftime show where Clarence Thomas is just going to stand up and read the Constitution. I found that funny. But the thing is, a couple people have mentioned the thing I'm going to talk about. First of all, everyone's talking about, well, Bad Bunny didn't speak in English, blah blah blah. That's terrible. And I am one of those people who thinks that we do need a declared official national language, if only because all of our founding documents are written in English. I mean, we are literally looking at maybe 5,000 years from now, whether America's still around or not. But still, people want to read that stuff 5,000 years from now, that people, if the United States still exists, we might have a thing where people won't be able to read our founding documents. I mean, so we need to declare a national language for that reason alone. Now, that said, the thing that I heard from people in the know, I'm not very fluent in Spanish, that the thing about Bad Bunny is that the lyrics are just obscene as hell. Matter of fact, I heard one person told me that if he had sung the English translations, it wouldn't have gotten past the FCC. They couldn't have broadcast it. That's the problem, really. And we've had, to be blunt, dirty lyrics from artists from the past. But I guess like I said, I did not bother to look into this much, and I don't speak Spanish. But I understand this was really bad. It was really terrible. That's the thing, and that's the thing that bothered a lot of people. Right? It wasn't nothing to do with the fact that he wasn't speaking English or that he's from Puerto Rico or any of that sort of stuff. It's just obscene. There's that, and also then there's the other thing too. And you wonder, well, why did the NFL do this? Well, I'll tell you why they did this, and I'm not the only person who picked up on this. They're making a push to make this the National Football League a global phenomenon. They are. And they already got America. They got the Americans. And so you're thinking, well, didn't they alienate people by just doing some of this stuff? Well, yeah, but not enough that they're not going to come back. And like Ed Morrissey at Hot Air pointed out, they have no competition. In the United States, you want to watch professional football, you watch the NFL. It's not like there's a competing league or anything like that. So I actually wrote this down here. Next year, they're going to play 9 regular season games overseas in the following cities: Melbourne, Australia; Rio de Janeiro, Brazil; Paris; Munich; Madrid; Mexico City; and 3 games in London. And I understand that the plan right now for 2028 is they're going to play at least one regular season weekly game somewhere outside of the United States. That's all 17 weeks of the season. They're going to have one game outside of the U.S. That's the plan. Because at some point, they want to start putting professional teams overseas. Now, you may think, well, this is nuts. Well, no, actually it isn't. First of all, we've been going to London now. They've been going to London now for a few years, and the games in London are drawing extremely well. they're basically drawing more people than the Premier League is in London. And that's saying something. That really is. And then there's this, you probably don't know this. There's several, not several, there's one, but there's several semi-professional teams playing American football in Germany. They have a semi-professional American football league in Germany. They do. I don't know how many people are going to watch it, but it exists and it's been around for quite a while, the way I understand. So this is not really beyond the pale or realm of possibility here. It really isn't. It's going to be really interesting. I don't know if Roger Goodell's a genius or an idiot. I can't tell. But anyway, that's the plan. And it's pretty obvious. They decide to get a little attention here by basically dividing the audience, which I think is terrible because that seems to be everyone's figured out now that works. I mean, you see this on social media all the time. You alienate half the audience and then the other half that hates you Tuesday because they hate you. I don't know. I can't stand it. I didn't watch the halftime show because I wasn't even home. I went grocery shopping. I came back. I watched the last quarter of the game. That was it. I thought, well, this would be a great time to get out. And I was right. I went to the Super Target #1 in Roseville, the very first one, and there was nobody there. And it was a great time to shop. And I got a lot of shopping done. So, yeah, because I'm just not that interested. I'm not, whatever. So Jeffrey Epstein has raised his ugly head from the grave. Ghislaine, whatever her name is, Maxwell, appeared in front of Congress or congressional committee and pleaded the fifth. And she says that she will testify fully if Trump pardons her. Now, a lot of people think, well, that's because she would actually claim that Trump didn't do anything. In other words, it's quid pro quo, and that's bullshit. But now that said, after she appeared, her lawyer came out and said that Giselle has nothing negative to say about either President Trump or President Clinton, even though Clinton was on that plane and went to that island a zillion times. But there's a caveat there. Now, you may not believe me, and also I can't tell you, I don't have any inside information here. This is third-hand information. But I understand Bill Clinton did not go to that island for underage girls or even other girls. He was chasing after Ghislaine. Apparently, they had a thing going on. So he was basically just following her around, supposedly. And I don't know Bill Clinton. I have a friend who actually knows him. The second party. But my impression is, I don't know. This is my gut. I can't tell you how I think this. I don't think that makes sense to me. I don't think Clinton was out. I don't think he's interested in underage women. But anyway, the way that the 3 million documents that got dumped last week, people are going through them and saying it's pretty obvious now there was no sex trafficking ring. That Epstein himself was an absolute monster. But all of the women that were supplied for him alone, and some of his friends, like Prince Andrew, that he basically was like he was passing around sloppy seconds, basically. But there's no organized trafficking ring at all. He would, if he would have friends come over. In some ways, this is more interesting. It's getting more interesting by the day because of the stuff that we now do know. Because I still get back to this thing: is where did Epstein get his money? There's a narrative of how he did it, but apparently the narrative is false about he was teaching at some private school in New York City, even though he never graduated from college, that would be unusual, especially, teaching is one of the very few things where you actually need a degree, in pretty much all 50 states. And so he was supposedly teaching at the school, and they ended up helping out some guy who worked for a hedge fund or something like that, and ended up starting his own firm, blah, 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 blah. A lot of people don't believe it. I'm not certain I believe it either. I still get back to Bill Walton came on the show, and I've invited Bill back. I hope he comes back in the next couple of weeks. He's been on a couple times, and he said that he was the CEO of what company? Was it DuPont or something like that? He's majorly connected in the United States, and he worked on the Trump transition team in 2016. He's a friend of Trump's, And he said that his contacts have told him that Epstein worked for Mossad, the intelligence agency of Israel, and that they were propping him up. And so basically, it was a front. They gave him enormous amounts of money to basically front and blackmail a bunch of people, supposedly. So, and that's the thing. So he might have blackmailed a bunch of these people who were coming to the island, but there was no. It's pretty obvious there was no organized sex trafficking ring to supply those people with women. There you go. That's what I know, and it doesn't matter because who am I? Who knows? I may be right. I may be wrong. And I got to say, my prediction percentage is pretty good, but still. So, okay. So what else happened this weekend is that Eric Burleson, the congressman, and I can't remember what state he's from, but he says he has now gotten permission from the Trump White House to visit a lot of these sites that are classified by the National Intelligence Committee or apparatus that supposedly are keeping crash UFOs. He's really into this. He says the public should know about this, and so he's given permission now, carte blanche. So they have to let him in, I guess. He's going to go to Area 51, and he's going to go to, what's the name of is it Platant? I can't remember, the place in Maine or something like that. And also, he's also referenced the fact that supposedly in South Korea, they have found crashed ET spacecraft that is so large they can't move it. They've built a building around it to hide it, apparently, supposedly. He talks about this. A lot of this stuff is lore, but then again, a lot of this lore seems to be coming true. I don't know what to make of it. I can tell you, I'm quite certain we have crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft. And also, a counter to that is today, George Knapp, the investigative journalist from Las Vegas, he released a whole bunch of documents that he got from the former Soviet Union in 1993, the year after the Soviet Union collapsed, regarding their UFO programs. And these documents now, once again, there's no actual physical evidence. There isn't. These are just reports and documents generated by the former Soviet Union that reference all sorts of encounters, abductions involving Soviet military personnel. And apparently it goes on. It's quite in depth, and there's a lot of them, supposedly. And finally, also on Political Saucer, which is a Substack newsletter, they put out a thing about the fact that Jonathan and I talked about this during the interview about the fact that they've missed the 7th window for launching the Artemis 2 to the moon. This would be the orbital stage. It's basically the tryout for the landing. But I didn't know this. They have not finished even building the lunar lander. It's like the lunar, like when it was Apollo 10 went around the moon as the dress rehearsal for Apollo 11. They actually had the lunar lander and detached it and then put it back, or they let it crash or something like that. But anyway, they actually rode it part way down to the moon, but never actually landed. It was a dress rehearsal, right? Okay. Well, the thing is, this vehicle now with 4 astronauts is going to go around the moon, but not only are they not taking a lunar lander, they haven't even built one yet. I just find this amazing. So they missed the 7th launch window, and like I told Jonathan, I know why they're doing this, because they rushed the Challenger launch and exploded. They don't want that to happen again. They don't. I don't blame them. We don't want to lose lives. Not only that, set the space program back 2 years. And not only that, it was avoidable. The people at Raytheon who built the engines, they knew it was going to explode. You couldn't run them under 40 degrees, and it was 32 apparently on the day they launched them. And they literally, those guys said, the engine will blow up, and they did. They were right. You know, the O-rings couldn't handle the temperature. But so anyway, excuse me. Hold on. Political Saucer on Substack wrote an article today about the Clementine project, which was an orbiter we sent to the moon to map the lunar surface. Now, I've seen some of these pictures. The article is about the fact that you can't. This is almost inescapable at this point that there are artificial structures on the moon, and also especially on the dark side, the side that never faces Earth. And that alone is weird. It's the moon is the only object, not only in the solar system that we've ever seen anywhere in the universe that revolves exactly one revolution for every rotation around the Earth. In other words, and because of that, one side never faces the Earth ever. It's the only single. A lot of people have said that the moon is basically just a giant artificial satellite, and it's hard. You look at something that size and you think, well, that's nuts. But also, we know it's pretty much hollow. We know that for the fact because we've done seismic pings on it forever, and they know from the pings that there's nothing in there. It is not a solid object. They know that. And you can look this up. This is not conspiracy crap. This is an established thing that they can't explain it, but the moon appears to be hollow. Well, Jesus, So, at any rate, there's been photos taken of the lunar surface by orbiters and reconnaissance spacecraft for years that show these strange structures. I've seen some of these pictures. This stuff's unbelievable. You would actually look at this and well, that's a building. It's like, Christ, that's not natural, especially on the dark side of the moon. If you were going to, if you were an ET and wanted to hide out, it's a perfect place to do it. You'd never be seen from Earth ever. And some of this stuff is so large, it's been picked up by telescopes in space from Earth. I don't know if you know, there's people talking about, we faked the moon landing. No, you know how we can prove we didn't fake the moon landing? Because you can look through a telescope and you can actually see all the Apollo moon landing sites. The bases are there, the lunar lander bases, all the bullshit they left. You can see them, actually see them with a telescope. But then there's people have been showing this stuff. You show this crap that there's structures on the moon. There are, and people have just been like ignoring this thing, ignoring this problem or problem. I don't know if it's a problem, but it's a phenomenon, and it's like, well, you can't ignore it. We didn't build that crap, and as far as we know, we're the only other, country on Earth who sent people to the moon. There's a couple countries that have sent probes and spacecraft. And even if I'm right, a couple haven't even landed, but they're unmanned, and up until now, maybe like next year, up until now, you can't build stuff on the moon without people. Sooner or later we'll have android robots, and literally probably next year. But up till now, no. So we didn't build that stuff. So, although I have to say, there's been a theory going on. We stopped going to the moon in 1972. Apollo 17 was the last one. They were supposedly going to do it as Apollo 18, and they scratched it. And some people said, no, they actually did go. They never told the public. And that's the thing. The theory is that the U.S. military has been going ever since. That's the theory. And that we actually do have bases on the moon. Although some of these buildings are pretty damn big. So, I don't know. It's just it's crazy stuff. Okay, one more thing here. Fox News ran an article on this morning, and that is young people who are basically cutting off their parents emotionally, who are ghosting their parents for all sorts of reasons, weddings, who knows, who knows. I'm bringing this up because I've talked about this before, and I think this is very important. and that is you need your family connections. If you're thinking about doing this, think long and hard. And even this article, the psychiatrist they interviewed said the same thing I did. If your father raped you as a child, I understand why you don't want to talk to him. I do, but that's a very small percentage of the reasons why people do this. Most people do not have what I or a psychologist would consider a legitimate reason to estrange from your parents or estrange from your family. You know, um, we used to. It used to be a thing where you figured out how to get along, and then now, I mean, I don't have to tell you, there's people who are doing this over politics, which is the stupidest reason ever, ever. You, you're not going to talk to your parents because of politics? That's nuts. Politics. This is the thing we have to get through. And one of the things I'm trying to get through on this show, politics is not that important. Yeah, it's important, but the thing is also, what can you do about it? Usually nothing, other than vote. Usually nothing. And even if you want to do something, it's pretty hard. I'm not saying that that one person can't change the world. Actually, one person can, but it's going to take an enormous amount of effort. And my guess is you don't have the will to do it. That's my guess. Most people just want to stick to their jobs and go fly fishing. That's what they want to do. So it's like, and then people, this article was about all these young women who have been estranged from their parents over their weddings. Oh, get over it. Jesus Christ. I mean, it's like the stupidest thing ever. I can't stress this to you enough. It's like you need your family, and your family may be dysfunctional. Most are, and your parents may be idiots. Very good possibility. Although you may be not quite as bright as you think either, but it doesn't matter. Figure it out. Talk about stuff that doesn't. I don't. I'm not being very eloquent here, but I can tell you this just from the bottom of my heart. Figure it out. We need each other. Love it. Love reigns. And that was, getting back to Bad Bunny. That was the one thing they put on the giant jumbotron at the thing he's talked about. I can't remember what it was. Love is everything or something like that. And yeah, he's right. Even though the lyrics are, oh my God, but it's true. It's like I'm just bringing this full circle, I guess. And I got to talk to Don Zoro. He's Puerto Rican. See what he thinks. I should have him on next week. I'll do that. I'll book him. Anyway, yeah. Love your family. It's you'd be surprised as you get older. It's the only thing you've got. And like Jonathan and I were talking, you're not going to take any of it else with you. I can't remember we said that before we started, or for the actual interview, but we were talking about that. So anyway, this is the last week where we're doing 2 shows a week. So we're taking tomorrow, Tuesday, and Wednesday off. Excuse me. We'll be back on Thursday. I don't know who the guest is going to be yet. We're still juggling that. On Monday, a week from today, Jonathan Butcher, the guy who was supposed to be on last Thursday and had an emergency, he's coming on next Monday. I don't know who's going to be on Thursday, but we'll have somebody. We'll do a show on Thursday, and then starting next week, we're back to 4 nights a week. So I want to thank you folks for watching. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And like I said, pay attention to your family. Okay, it's not that hard. It really isn't. Even if you think it is, and even if it really is, still do it anyway. Good night, Uncle Donnie, wherever you are, and good night to you, wherever you may be. We're taking the next couple nights off. We'll be back on Thursday, folks. You take care.